G'day guys, I'm Ronny Dahl and I'm going to show you my favourite bush damper. Very simple, let's get straight into it. So with your fire going already, just make sure you've got enough wood just to keep the coals going in case you need to replace them, because some woods are better than other woods. Let's not get into that though. Let's get into the ingredients. Now these are the coal ingredients. Need a beer. That's probably about the only time you want a beer in the morning. Salami and a bit of cheese. Now I'm adding a bit of spice. You don't need to do this, but I'm adding jalapenos. So if you like a bit of spice, I'd definitely recommend chucking some jalapenos in there. In regards to dry ingredients, flour. That's it. That's all we need. This will make my favourite damper. You have your ingredients ready to go. You've got a bucket or a tub or a bowl to mix it in, and you've got your fire roaring in the background. Just make sure that you've got those coals. All right, first thing you need to do is get a cup. Try and get a cup around 250 ml. This one here happens to be 245 ml, so it's close enough. It's just close enough. You don't need full on exact measurements, but this is probably the only thing you do need to measure out. So 3.5 cups of flour. Next thing we need to do is grab the salami. Whoops, lost a piece on the ground there. 3-second rule out in the bush. Next we have the jalapenos. Now, as I said, if you don't like hot food, don't put these in. This is optional. I don't mind a good hit in the morning though. With the cheese, we're going to leave the cheese out of this process until the very end. But now it's time to oil up one of your hands. You can oil both your hands if you like kneading with both hands, but I recommend just one hand so you've got another hand to still move things around. Now to the beer, the liquid to make all this stick. You can get away with water, however, beer adds this little flavour, and it is kids friendly because once you bake this bread, the alcohol will evaporate. So don't worry kids, there's a nice damper here for you too. If your mix is a little bit too wet, just add a bit more flour. It's probably about half a cup extra I put in there. It all depends on what you add in. So jalapenos, because they're wet, they can actually add a bit more liquid to it, so you need a bit more flour. So the consistency we're going for here is not a too wet, not a too dry. It's a bit more like a Play-Doh sort of consistency. It's still going to be a little bit sticky, and the reason why I like it like that is because it keeps a bit of moisture in it and it's going to be nice and fluffy. But you don't want to knead it too much either, because the air bubbles from the froth of the beer adds a bit of, you know, like fluffiness to the bread. It's now time to go grab your camp oven. We got the camp oven ready. Baking paper. Now, depending on the size of your camp oven, you may need to do 2 sheets, one way, one the other way, like make like a cross with it. It just makes sure that your camp bread damper doesn't stick to the sides. It's now time to get the dough out and put it in your camp oven. Yeah, looking good. Now we put the cheese on top, but we push it in a little bit. Kind of want it to be a little bit crusty on top, but we don't want to burn it either, so that's why we're pushing it in a little bit. We have our cheese half embedded in, which will be nice and crusty, and we're now ready for the fire. So let's go grab some coals, put the lid on, and get this thing baking. So we want some nice hot coals here. Now we may have to replace these depending on how they go. Being daytime, it's not that easy to see how red or glowing they are. Bread's in the oven. We've left a little circle in the middle. otherwise you're gonna just burn the bread. Now, about 20 minutes is about good. If you preheat your oven, it's about 20 minutes. This isn't preheated. I'd say about 25 minutes, but we'll check it at about 15 minutes. We've just done our 20-minute check. Now, as I didn't preheat the oven, 20-25 minutes. Now, the top is very slightly burnt, but that's a good sign actually. We are almost there. So I've taken the heat off the top. I just want to give it a bit more around the sides, just let it rest for a bit in the oven. So I'm just scratching all these off the top. Helps having welding gloves. $5 at any hardware store. Give it another couple of minutes and then we're going to take it off, let it cool down, let it rest, and then we'll slice it up and have some brekkie. Moment of truth. I'm very confident. Oh yes, that looks like a perler. Ho ho! We got a beauty. Okay, now when you pull it out of your camp oven, don't just go hammer and tongs and cut it up. Let it rest for a little bit, let it cool down. And don't let it cool down so it's cold, but just so it's warm and you can work with it. Right now it's a bit hot. We'll be back in a second. With the magic of editing, here we are, ready to cut it. Nice and fluffy. For those who are using a trivet in your camp oven, I'll just get it out. Oh, it's a bit warm still. That's a trivet, that's a spacer. In other words, spacer in the bottom of your camp oven. If you use one of those, sometimes the bottom may be a bit doughy. If that's the case, take the heat off the top and just leave it in the fire for a very brief time and pull it out and you'll get the bottom nice and crisp as well. It's that easy. If you pull it out and the top's done, the bottom isn't, you can sort it out. It's not that hard. So it's a real easy recipe to do. So final words and final tip. What makes a good damper? How do you know you've done a good job? The top being nice and hard, slightly burnt is fine. The bottom being nice and firm and not doughy. And the middle being fluffy. That's important. If the middle isn't fluffy, then you got a bit of a, boring biscuit bread almost. Also with the ingredients, don't put too much stuff in there. We only put half the salami in there. You want it sort of nice gaps so you can taste the bread, you can taste all the ingredients, and you know it's a really good damper if everyone around camp is quiet. And I reckon even the birds will be quiet after they finish our crumbs on the floor.